G'day, ladies and gentlemen. I want to do a little bit differently. This is the 13 keys to the White House. I've created this one on March 2023, so I haven't updated it towards any changes that Lichtman made in the previous year, which were quite a lot. Last modification, that is just nothing more than adding some stuff here, mainly changing this particular cell. So, 13 keys to the White House. From here up top, that is what Mr. Lichtman is saying, and down here is what I'm saying, right? So, one change that you may have noticed, I'll tell you right now. This cell value, it turns yellow the moment you have 5 counts of false or more. And this is when, simply put, this is the way that Mr. Lichtman wrote it. He changed it to being a majority of them need to be false after 2023, somewhere in that particular period. Just so you know, he changed his own model quite regularly to pretend that he's always correct, like the shyster he is. Kind of like Nate Silver is doing with his own model and the way 538 is doing it. Just, you know, manufacturing data points here and there to make sure that you're always correct. So, what does Mr. Lichtman say? At the moment, well, simply put, there are only 2 objective standards here in this particular model, and that's the first and the third key. Why is that? Because the number of House seats is something you can quantify. In this particular case, the Democrats had a majority in 2018. Republicans have a majority in 2022, therefore this key is false. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. That one's objectively false because Joe Biden is not the nominee. End of story. When it comes to serious contest for party nomination, that is a subjective key because what do you consider to be a serious contest? Is it both candidates have double digits in terms of proportion in delegates? Is it you have a contested election of contested convention? Or is it something in the form of all candidates that are considered serious contenders have more than 1,000 delegates? What is the measure? He doesn't tell you that, which is why he's always made it out to be true. For an example, 2008, Hillary Clinton was the front runner at the start. Obvious that she was going to get the nomination. Barack Obama jumps in. Suddenly we have a contested primary. Mr. Lichtman, however, says, it wasn't contested. 2016, Clinton against Sanders. Obviously a contested primary. Mr. Lichtman says, it wasn't contested. And the reason why he's saying that is because he is a partisan hack. So, the fourth would be a significant third party or independent campaign. So, Libertarians, Greens, Kennedy running in the election. Again, what do you consider a significant challenger? Is it the individual getting double digits in terms of popular vote? Is it the individual getting electoral votes? What do we call this? This is not an objective measure. It's once again saying, I think something happens. That's not the case in my position. I'm objective in this regard. I'm going to say that I would classify it as an individual getting electoral votes. Here's another one. Short-term economy. It's not in a recession. That is kind of objective. Because, well, a recession can be measured as 2 consecutive terms of negative GDP growth. Easy, right? Here's a little problem. 1992. Mr. Lichtman says it's false. We go to 1992 here, and as you can see, every single quarter had at least a 4% GDP growth. Therefore, not a recession. What does Mr. Lichtman say? Well, because Gallup polled that the people think there is a recession, therefore there's a recession. Yeah, that's not how it works, buddy. So again, this is not really an objective measure if you can just override it by yourself whenever you feel like it. Same thing here. Long-term economy, real per capita GDP growth during the term equals or exceeds the mean growth of the previous 2 terms. Again, you can think it's objective. No, that is wrong. That should be a mistake. That should be averaged out. That's fine. We can just do this live, I suppose. Here we go. So that would be the average of these 8 years. And as you can see, you kind of have a problem here, because it's always true. Which means the objective of the measure of per GDP per capita growth is just stupid, because that's always true, as it is in a developing nation. Therefore, long-term economy, who cares? This is not a measure. If it's always true, then you're not doing something right in terms of a measurement. Policy change. Incumbent administration effect major changes in national policy. Like what? Subjective. No sustained civil unrest. Subjective. What is sustained? What do you consider civil unrest? Is it a continuous riot? Is it insurrections? For an example, in Washington back in 2020, do you consider that to be civil unrest? Mr. Lichtman doesn't qualify it. Incumbent administration is untainted by a major scandal. What do you qualify as a scandal? So the problem that you see here with Mr. Lichtman is essentially every single one of his keys is subjective. Major foreign policy or military affair failure, what do you classify it as? Successes, what do you classify them as? Incumbent party administration is charismatic. Charismatic is an opinion. National hero, kind of subjective regarding the crowd that you speak to and who you associate yourself with. Barack Obama is considered a national hero to Democrats. Republicans hate the guy. Is he now considered a national hero? Not really. You can't say that. And at the moment, it's very easy to say that this key has to be always false. Both of this one always has to be false. This one always has to be true. Because we're talking about subjective measures here. And if a partisan were to fill this one in, for an example, I would say Trump is charismatic. Why is that? Well, very obviously, every single time he enters a room, he draws all the attention in on himself. Every single time he holds a speech, people are entranced by it. That is something charisma dictates. Other people that despise Trump would say, well, that's obviously false, because they don't ever listen to him. So this is a subjective measure. So at the moment we have 1 true and 2 false. These are objectively the case. When it comes to anything else in this particular regard, we can not say this at the moment. So the way that I filled it in at this moment is very... I'm trying to be objective here. So these 3 are the same as with Mr. Lichtman. However, social unrest, well, I consider the Palestine protests, I consider that to be sustained civil unrest. As long as college is in session, there will be protests there. So universities are now open for their autumn term. Therefore, there will be social unrest regarding the Palestine thing. So yes, I'm saying there is sustained social unrest. The administration is untainted by major scandal. Well, the impeachment inquiry, that's a scandal. You have the cabinet actively hiding Biden's mental decline. That is a scandal. You have the Afghanistan thing. with the withdrawal with Abbeygate. That is a scandal, but it's also a foreign policy failure and a military failure. So this one is false. This one is also false. We now have 5 terms of false, which means that the dictate here is that it will be a Trump victory with the criteria that Mr. Lichtman has put in at 2013. Now, his current criteria says that it has to be 6 or more in order for it to be true for a Trump victory. Okay, so let's go. Significant third-party challenge. Well, that would be a no. Short-term economies, not in a recession. Well, at the moment, we go to 2024. This particular cycle, we don't have the cycle for 2023 yet, but it's probably going to be positive. Same thing goes for the last quarter, so that would not be a recession. However, what Mr. Lichtman did in 1992, I'm just going to do it right now here back at him. And people are seeing that the economy is shit. They are feeling that the economy is shit, despite not being a recession. As a result, I'm going to fill this in as false. Same thing that Mr. Lichtman did in 1992. The people perceive the economy to be poor, therefore it's poor. I'm putting this in as italics because that is something that I'm filling in on my own perception. Okay, long-term economy. Real per capita GDP growth exceeds the previous term. Okay. So we go to this cycle on this time around. Let's say we make this 82,000. And as you can see, this start would be at the end of Trump's term. Start of Biden's term. So that would be $71,000 per capita per American citizen. If that is going to be greater than 2%, which means it would be greater than $73,000, something in that particular range, then that would be true. Let's do this for a joke. That's still true. Let's find the number real quick. So about $72,800. If the GDP per capita is greater than that, it will be true. Which in this particular case, you just have a Boolean value of it always being true, which is stupid. It's not really doing anything for us. How about this one? GDP, so per capita disposable income. Well, how about if we have that exceed the previous term? That would be requiring to be somewhere in the $60,000 range. Well, that's going to be not true because people have less income to spend as a result because of the inflation crisis, which is caused by Biden and the Inflation Reduction Act. Therefore, I'm going to say this is false. And we're now at 7 keys for Trump, 2 for Harris. Policy change, this one is always true. Because we're talking about legislation. So the Inflation Reduction Act, we consider that to be a major change in policy. It's basically just a Solyndra scam once again. Foreign military success. Nah, there isn't any. Incumbent party nominee is charismatic. Come on, we're talking about Kamala Harris. The challenging candidate is not charismatic. Well, once again, this is a distinction here. Personally, I think that Trump is charismatic. He commands presence in the room. I'm going to say this is false. As a result, we have 10 keys for Mr. Trump. We have 3 for Mrs. Harris. As a result, Trump wins the presidency, according to the keys to the White House. Pretty obvious here. And I'm not even manufacturing data points for my own needs. I'm just doing whatever Lichtman is doing. Which is, ironically, the same thing that I'm trying to prevent. So, even if you were to give the economy to Harris, and you were to give the charisma to Harris as well, which I really disagree with, you still have 6 keys for Mr. Trump, which is sufficient for him to get the White House, regardless of what we're doing here today. As a result, keys to the White House predict a Trump victory. Not whatever the partisan hack that is Lichtman is doing. So, that'll be it for today. This is a pretty fun one to do here. I'm gonna have to double check this really quick, but I'll do that off camera. So, thank you kindly for watching. See you next time. Cheers.